Hi, my name is EJ LeBlanc, and I'm here to talk to you today about my journey from being an English teacher to an instructional systems designer. And in fact, we're actually going to be going a bit further and talking about my entire career, branching back from fresh out of high school to my journey in the Navy, to choosing to become an English teacher, and then my decision to leave the English field and my teaching profession to become an instructional systems designer and human performance technologist. The things I'm going to share with you today, lots of highs and lows. I'm going to try to keep it brief. If you want me to focus or talk more about a particular part of my career, just let me know. Comment on the video, reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Let me know what your thoughts are on the video and what you would like me to elaborate on or share more on. So let's start in high school. So in high school, my first experience in instructional systems design, I had no clue what instructional design was, but it was my first instructional intervention. My colonel tasked me to create this book called the AFJRTC Cadet Handbook, or Handbook of Cadet Knowledge. And basically the idea behind it was that everyone would look at these, the chain of command and, memorize these aerial maneuvers and different facts and figures that people would look at and remember and be able to respond to on command. And they would walk around with these handbooks constantly in their back pockets and be able to whip them out. And any time that they were standing around in line, their nose was in a book, reading one of these things. So it was very handy, and it was my first time that I made a learning intervention that people would actually use and I would actually get involved with. And it was really cool. That in combination with learning how to use PowerPoint back in '97 or earlier. I think the first PowerPoint presentation I made was in 1995, using Windows 95. And I was able to work in that Air Force ROTC environment. And I'm very grateful to both that Air Force Junior ROTC teacher and my English teacher, a guy named Jeff Eastoe. And Mr. Eastoe was very influential in helping me to fall in love with reading and writing and thinking and being to love literature and drawing out meaning from just about anything I could get, whatever the medium was, would be it video games or MTV videos, whatever it was. I would absolutely love looking for the deeper meaning of whatever the medium was, specifically because of the way that we would pore over the details and stories and find the themes and really get into my early steps in literary analysis in those classes. And so I knew whenever I left high school that I was going to join the Navy. I had already gotten my MEPS program and gotten everything squared away. And so whenever I joined the Navy, I became a sonar technician primarily because of a movie called The Hunt for Red October. I did very well in the Navy. I was a sonar technician for submarines. And my very first battle stations, and I show up to the sonar room, and I'm like, where do I sit? And they say, sit there, nub. Nub means non-useful body. And so I look at this machine, and I'm like, what is this thing? And they said, doesn't matter, it's useless, like you are. So I sit down at this machine, I look at the monitors, and I'm like, what in the world is this thing? I have no idea. And so I'm looking at the sonar data coming down, and I look down at the bottom, and it has this little plaque. It says AN-BQR22 Alpha. I'm like, by golly, I'm going to be the best AN-BQR22 Alpha operator ever. I could not find anyone on the boat that knew anything about this device. Everyone thought it was useless. And so I decided to go into the submarine onboard training library, and I found these CD-ROMs. And in 3 weeks, I took the Journeyman, the Apprentice, and the Master level courses, and I'd be like, hey guys, this thing's amazing, check this thing out. Be like, shut up, nub. I couldn't get a willing ear to listen to pretty much anything I had to say about the wonders of the BQR-22 until one night. I show up to the midwatch, and the main sonar screens are blank, and my baby is working like a champ. But everyone else, the lights are on, the screens are dark. No one's even paying any attention to my baby. And they said, oh, the main sonar system broken, deploy the cane array, and all sorts of sonarman jokes. And basically, no one had even looked at this thing. So I sat down, put on my headphones, and said, Sonar Supervisor, Cane Spherical Array, demonstration, Span 314, classified surface contact by nature of sound. Hey, I had everyone's attention. And for the next 24 hours, I taught everyone about the wonders of the BQR-22 that I had only known specifically because of those CD-ROMs. If it wasn't for those CD-ROMs, we would not have been able to stay at sea. We literally would not have been able to fulfill our mission. And, other details that are important to the story. We were on alert, which meant that if the president ordered, we were responsible at that point for being the ones that would actually launch nuclear weapons. And so we would lose coverage if we had to pull in. And so that's what this system was originally designed for, was to be there in the event of a redundancy. And those CD-ROMs were the thing that enabled me to be able to stay at sea. Far and away, the thing that I loved the most about being in the Navy was learning a complex system and teaching that to other people in a moment of need. So whenever I got out of the Navy, whenever I chose to head out, I thought about all the things that I loved, and I thought about all my experiences, and I said, you know what, I'm going to be an English teacher. I love reading, I love thinking, I love teaching, and I love learning. Oh my goodness, let's help other kids love to learn too. Turned down a $45,000 re-enlistment bonus and went after becoming a teacher, and taught in some pretty difficult environments. And then I got my first job, and whenever I became an English teacher, I got in trouble a lot. I got in trouble because the primary purpose of education, according to most of the people there, was to be able to regurgitate information that the teachers had deposited to the students. And as long as Sally so-and-so, who always gets A's, continues to get A's, everybody's happy. But the second that Sally so-and-so doesn't make an A, well, that must be my fault, because I'm the only class that she's struggling in. It doesn't matter if the students had never used rubrics before and did not follow directions. It did not matter, that it was even built into the curricula to where it was expected that Sally so-and-so might struggle and would eventually be making A's by the end of it, but could fail like 5 or 6 of these things and still come out, with flying colors. Meanwhile, if Freddie Fo? No. Meanwhile, if Freddie Fo, if he comes home getting an F, status quo. No change, no big deal. Totally not my fault. So I didn't like any of that, and especially the part where the test and everything seemed to be built towards just giving them information that I would expect them to regurgitate. One of the things that I absolutely didn't like was how my students would be able to circle the correct answer of what the vocabulary words meant, and they would be able to spell the word, spell words correctly, but they didn't know what their spelling words meant, nor could they use it in a sentence. Neither did they know how to spell their vocabulary words or how to use it in a sentence. So I was very vexed and pushed quite hard on trying to change the culture, and went after my master's in instructional systems design, specifically trying to change the culture there. And so 2 years into that, my 5th year of teaching, was the final straw, though, for my English teaching career. In November of 2004, my students were doing Romeo and Juliet, and basically a well-to-do parent must have complained, because I was told by my administrator, a parent came to me and said, that I don't know what they were saying, but it must have been bad because of the way they were saying it. And I said, wait a second. You mean to tell me that my kids were using Elizabethan English that I taught them in my classroom, and they were using it in real life? And they said, yes. And they said, we're banning Romeo and Juliet. And I said, I'm not coming back next year. I'm done. And so a whole bunch of other weird stuff happened, and a bunch of other stuff was going on. But wouldn't you know it, at that exact moment in time at my master's degree, I was learning about instructional systems design in the military. And I realized I'm becoming the guy that's designing those CD-ROMs. Had I known about this whole field of instructional systems design, there's no way I would have gone into being an English teacher. I would have gone head over heels after helping other people, teaching other people, mapping out complex systems and figuring out how to explain stuff. Man, that's awesome. And so I did not look back. And my first gig was working with South Alabama as a glorified intern, where I was going for my school work at the time. And the timing of it was perfect, because as it was, I needed an internship in order to even graduate. And so to go and do the internship was very helpful. And I was able to write a report within that context. And but then, started looking for a job and started looking for a full-time position, initially with the university, and started poking around. And when in Anniston, Alabama, there was an opportunity that I went for, and I seized it. And I was warned straight up that the contract was under duress, and the contract was already in a terrible spot, and it might not get renewed, and there was only 3 months left in the contract. Their hiring me was specifically part of their trying to appease the customer and show them the actions that they were doing to prevent the loss of that contract. And so I went there, and I worked hard, and I drove five hours up to Anniston, Alabama, stayed in a hotel for 4 days a week, worked 10-hour days, and then came back down home, where my pregnant wife was staying in Mobile, Alabama. And so lots of stuff going on. The contract only lasted 3 months. I learned a great deal. And so I went back home and was staying at home with my wife, and started doing P90X. And I'm in the middle of doing P90X yoga, and I get this call, and it's from someone from the university had referred me to a company called Harcon, who had in turn referred them to me. And so whenever I got the call, I was already hired but we had an interview that day, and then we had another interview. Before I even filled out the application, I was already hired. And the work that I did in university, the portfolio that I made, that work that I did, it preceded me, and people talked about it. And that's really been my whole career, is just doing the very best I could on whatever the project was, seeing what other people thought of as a terrible opportunity, and then making something awesome out of it. And so there was, I got to work for the Coast Guard and do some amazing work there. So much awesome work. Got to do e-learning and go fly around making videos inside of helicopters, leaning out the side of helicopters. Lots of highs on my career. And so whenever I do the really good work, it's whenever I'm in an environment where we could collaborate and we can, I could listen, I could find out what the needs are and do whatever it takes to meet those needs. For example, in the Coast Guard, there was one project where there's this guy that was freaking out over his PDF forms, and he was shouting a bunch of expletives in front of his computer about Adobe Acrobat. And so I zeroed in on that and kind of sat about good 10 feet away and listened to him ramble on a rant about this terrible, awful software and how he was spending so much of his time. He said, I quote, "I spend 70 to 80% of my time on this dadgum on this dadgum PDFs." And so I said, "Oh, that's an opportunity." So I went home that night and used Adobe Lifecycle Designer at the time and completely revamped the forms. And I showed him my work the next day, and he's like, "This is amazing." And so literally that sparked the whole branch, the MH60 branch, to start talking about the forms and what we could do with them. 70 plus iterations later, we were finished with some forms that provided 80% return on investment. What was always taking about 20 minutes per student, per instructor pilot evaluation, went down to 3. And so they were able to assess student performance using these XML-based forms. And, I didn't know anything about XML at the time. I was just an English teacher not so long before. But I Googled a lot. I looked up stuff. I figured out what they needed to do and found the best tool that I could at that particular moment. That is my career in a nutshell. So here we are, over a decade later, and I'm running my own LLC now. I just founded another company that I hope to share with everyone in the near future. And if I were to just share about being a teacher, I miss the kids, man. I do. I miss teaching. I loved it. My kids we choreographed sword fights in the classroom. We had poetry assignments with this one kid. Kids would dance and bring drums in the classroom and all kinds of other fun stuff that's unforgettable and help kids find their voices. And so. But I don't miss the environment and the culture that is American education, that is Western education, which is industrial and which is industrially minded. And since that time, I've learned a great deal about what it actually takes to change a school culture. And there's a guy named Joe Harless who created the accomplishment-based curriculum development method, and is one of my heroes. And there's even a book that he wrote called The Eden Conspiracy, where he talks about how an accomplishment-based focus can create a wonderful culture change, not just for the school, but for the entire community at large, and help provide value for entire communities. And that focus is probably the main thing that I'm grateful for about where I went to school to get my instructional design degree, because it was focused on instructional systems design and development. However, throughout all of my courses, there was also a focus on what is known as human performance technology. And human performance technology is all about, fundamentally, identifying and meeting needs. If I could identify a performance discrepancy, I could find a performance solution. If that solution involves learning, great. That put on your instructional systems design hat. Otherwise, use a job aid, write a poster, make whatever it is that make a checklist, whatever it is that they need, such as the case of that, XML-based form, that performance assessment form. Whatever it is that they need, identify the need, meet the need. Roll up your sleeves and do what it takes in order to provide value to your organization. And that mindset has served me well and has really helped me be to date, very successful in the vast majority of my projects. There's lots of horror stories and lots of failures along the way. But, you know, fortunately, I'm still kicking and I'm still providing value. And I love working with organizations and places where I'm able to provide that value. And I love teaching. I'll leave you with PhD candidate Carrie Ward. She's the founder of OtherJobsForTeachers.com, and she has a great deal of resources to share.
Thanks for sharing your story with us, EJ. I'm Carrie, and I'm also a former teacher who made the leap into instructional design in 2013. Currently, I'm an instructional design consultant. I started my own LLC in 2016. It's called Instructional Design Studio LLC. I also started a website called OtherJobsForTeachers.com. And on that website, people will be able to find stories from other former teachers who also made the jump into instructional design and training. You'll also find resources such as maybe resume lingo to use, resume lingo not to use, how to potentially create a skill-based resume, and resources on getting involved. The 5 steps I recommend anybody to take who's looking to do the same thing is learn the industry, the people, the lingo, create a LinkedIn profile, update your resume, develop your skills and your knowledge, and networking is key. You want to definitely get involved with as many people as you can and learn as much as you can, and that will help you be the most successful.
And thanks for watching. Please let me know if there's anything I could do to help.